Hello, everyone. So, this is part two, I presume, of the podcast that I would do. Part two, in the sense of it's part two of The Walking Dead. What if I was in it? I decided to continue this, see how me directly would be able to impact the story of season two. This will continue most of the story of season one of The Walking Dead from like from how I would have impacted it. So the unfortunately the people that I wasn't able to save were Jim, Amy, and Ed. They would have all died or become infected during the camp attack. I was able to prevent the death of Jackie. Was able to convince her to come with us from the CDC. I was also unable to prevent the departure of Merrill because I wasn't in Atlanta, so I wasn't able to save him after he was handcuffed to the roof. But I was able to prevent the departure of Morales and his family, so I convinced them not to go to Birmingham due to how we don't know what the state of the world is because we haven't been to the CDC yet. So we have Jackie, Morales, his wife, and his two kids. They are now with the group, and I am going to continue from where I left off. So, in the first part of season two, our group is all heading down the highway where we break down due to the fact that Dale's, I think it's his pipe, the pipe of the RV breaks. So the RV has to stop, and multiple walkers begin to come out of the woodwork. So we all hide underneath vehicles, include and that also includes the other people who are also with us. Morales is with his family and his kids. Jackie hides underneath something, and everyone else hides where they initially hid. Uh, Due to this, T Dog hurts his arm still, and when a walker spots Sophia, she runs off, and another walker follows close behind. To As soon as I notice that Sophia is gone, I run after her because she is a child, and there are two walkers heading after her, two fully grown adult walkers going after her. So I don't know how much she would be able to protect herself. So I head down. Not long after, Rick begins to follow. There is the possibility that after I begin fending off these walkers with Sophia, I begin fending the walkers off with Sophia. There is the possibility that I might die because I'm not as well versed in fighting walkers, but I believe that I should be able to fend off both of these walkers. If not, then there is a possibility that Rick can get to me in time and also kill off these two walkers. Because of this, the whole thing about Sophia going missing doesn't happen, but everyone else still is in the woods looking for both me and Sophia, and we eventually re-meet up with Shane and Carl just as Carl is shot looking at the stag that Otis shoots. So after Carl is shot, both me, Rick, Shane, Sophia, and now the injured Kyle, Carl begins following Otis, who begins apologizing. We follow him to Herschel's farm, where they go and treat Carl. Rick stays with Carl for blood transfusions, making sure that the blood is perfectly okay. Not the blood that is perfectly okay. That Carl doesn't bleed out by providing his blood via blood transfusion. To make up for the shooting, we have Otis, who offers to get supplies from the FEMA outpost, which is in the school. I offer to go along, and Shane also offers to go along to make sure that we can get as much supplies as possible. I go along because I don't want to see Carl die, and also having an extra pair of hands might also be useful to make sure that, obviously, if they can't get all the supplies, then I can help and grab more supplies for them. Because of this, I miss everyone, like the initial introduction of like the group to Herschel, but I go to the school with Shane and Otis. So when we go to the school, we get as many supplies as possible, but because in the show, when we go to the school, when they go to the school, Shane and Otis encounter this massive horde of the undead. So when we encounter that horde, we all separate. I decide to go with Otis due to the fact that I know this sounds mean, but Otis isn't exactly the fittest person. It's better to go with him because if something happens to him, then I can grab his supplies and leave. So I help Otis get through the window on the ground floor, and I also climb out of the window. And when we all see the horde behind us, I still have a flare that I was able to grab from the school, and I offer to get the horde's attention so that both Shane and Otis can escape with as many supplies as possible. I give Otis my bag of supplies, and I tell Shane to make sure all of these supplies get back, and I will meet up with them as soon as possible. So after this, I light the flare, and I begin making as much noise as possible to draw the walkers away from everyone. And if that there is the possibility here as well that I might be killed by the horde of walkers if I'm not fast enough. But both Shane and Otis have left with the supplies. But there is also, for this, I believe that me being in a life or death situation, and like all of these walkers coming up to me, I believe that my adrenaline will kick in and that I can run much faster than I would usually run. I'm able to, once I believe that both Shane and Otis have escaped, I leave one of the flares on the floor and go and find somewhere to hide. From what I was told, the group in Atlanta used the like getting walkers' guts all over them was able to blend in with the undead, but the walkers. So I use this tactic. So I get a lone walker, cut him open, gut him, and slather all of the guts all on myself. When I return, well, what I do is try and blend in with the horde, try and escape the horde, and once I'm free and clear from them, I begin making my way back to the farm from what I remember. Because I miss the group initially arriving, they and Shane and Otis both arrived before me because I believe they had a car. So once they arrive, they believe that I have probably died because I decided to separate from them and go through the horde. But as they're preparing to mourn me, I come probably slathered in Walker's guts, out of breath, and I say that was we. As long as all of these supplies are safe, that was hopefully a good plan. I'm not exactly the smartest guy, but I'm glad that both of you are safe and that I am safe. So after this, I go and ask if I can clear all of the guts off myself. And I also ask if they have an electric shaver. And once all of the guts are cleared off, I get an electric shaver and shave off all of my hair to make sure that if I'm ever surrounded by walkers again, or if I'm ever near people, that they won't just grab my hair, pull it, and there is the possibility that I might die because of that, so I shave off all of my hair. But also because I arrived late, I missed them trying to remove that walker from the well. So when they remove that walker from the well, all of the water in that well becomes contaminated because the walker splits directly in half and all of the guts fall into the water supply of that well. So they don't have that well now to collect water from. But luckily, I'm able to continue the training that I initially asked Shane to start doing when before Rick arrived back in the season 1. So that continues going. We continue learning how to shoot guns, learning how to protect ourselves with weapons. We also begin offering if any of the group of Herschel's farm wants to join in, they can. So one of the main things that would have changed completely is obviously that Sophia is perfectly okay. So because Sophia has survived, Daryl doesn't continue searching for her, continue running himself ragged to make sure that she is okay. So he is perfectly coherent and he continues going out into the woods and hunting game, possibly teaching Otis how to use a crossbow or how to use a bow if Otis wants to do that. And Sophia, Carl, and Morales' kids are constantly not Carl at the moment because of his condition after being shot. So Sophia and Morales' kids continue playing around and continue enjoying the company of each other. Due to the fact that not many of this stuff, I believe I would include myself in, Glenn and Maggie, all of the stuff with them. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention. Also because of Daryl not running himself ragged, he doesn't fall down that cliff. So he doesn't hurt himself and he's not covered in blood. So when he eventually comes back, Andrea won't mistake him as a walker, so then she won't be shot. Okay, as I was saying before, all of the stuff with Glenn and Maggie would probably continue as normal. I wouldn't want to include myself in most of this stuff. It's literally them just going into town and collecting supplies. As they are all collecting supplies, Glenn, because they continue collecting supplies, Laurie find out she's pregnant through the pregnancy test that she asked Glenn and that lot to get. She also asked them to get abortion pills, where she eventually decides not to get them. But Glenn also eventually finds out about the barn that is filled with walkers, and begins questioning whether he wants to tell the rest of the group. Eventually, down the line, after the incident with, like, one of the incidents with Shane, Laurie, or no, not about an incident with Shane, when Laurie, after she uses the abortion pills, she decides not to have the kid. Rick eventually sees the abortion pills, and Laurie admits to Rick that she's pregnant. And due to the guilt of Glenn, he eventually tells everyone about the walkers in the barn. Due to the fact that I know how dangerous walkers are, because of the fact that I was just in that horde back at the school, as well as the multiple different instances where we have fought walkers and seen how dangerous they are, I side with Shane about the fact that we need to get rid of all of these walkers in the barn. It's very dangerous. They are very dangerous. There is the possibility that they might break out and kill everyone. Also due to this, not also due to this, but also due to the fact that Otis had never been killed when they escaped from the school, because I was able to divert the horde away from them. The conflict between Dale and Shane never happens, because Dale never has the incident where he finds out that that Shane had killed someone. And but due to the fact that all of these walkers are inside this barn and it is a danger to the group, Shane eventually decides to open it up anyway, and we kill all the walkers inside. But due to the fact that, again, Sophia was found, we found Sophia not long after she left. She is not in the barn, and she is not an undead, and she is still alive. Due to seeing the reaction of Herschel's family after we killed the walkers, my conscience gets the better of me, and I decide to help around the farm. I also find out that some of those walkers inside of there were actually, in fact, some of Herschel's dead family members. Herschel unfortunately leaves the farm due to the fact that both his wife and his son, who were walkers, had just been killed. I don't go with them because it's not my job to go with them. I do, though, talk with both Maggie, Beth, Patricia, Otis, and Jimmy, finding out as much as possible and trying to convince them that even if there was a chance of a cure, if they're already infected, if all of this stuff had already happened, it's very possible that they would have still been dead, especially with the fact that they had like cuts, bruises, possibly like rips and tears in their body. It's very possible, even if they were cured, they probably would have died anyway. No, it wouldn't make them feel better, but I want to try and make this like why we did it and why it's a bad idea to constantly bring walkers into the farm, and things like that. When Herschel and that lot left, Laurie left not long afterwards. She returns in Shane, returns with Shane, sorry, and due to them having an argument, Shane blurts out that Laurie's pregnant. seeing most of Shane's mannerisms, and due to some personal stuff, I know how a lot of toxic relationships will go. I decide to talk with Shane, try and convince him that going down this route can be destructive and dangerous, and can shower the friendships he has with the group, as well as Laurie, Carl, and Rick. Um, Unfortunately, I believe that this would probably leave me getting punched in the face by Shane, but I hope that my words might get through to him. Um, Not long afterwards, Rick, Glenn, and Herschel also return with a wounded man who has wounded his leg, who I eventually find out through Glenn was from a hostile group that had attacked them while they were at the bar. There, so now there is a time skip in the show where it skips for about 2 weeks. So I am going to say what I probably do in those 2 weeks. So I continue honing my skills, as well as continue trying to talk with Shane, try and convince him about all like how certain lines of thinkings can be bad, but also um, that due to the fact that he's being hostile to most of the group, that eventually the group will reject him. So if he continues going down this route, um, something bad might happen. I do also say that probably talking to Rick or Laurie about what happened and see if there's a way to get past this. I also reiterate to him that he is a good man and a good leader, but with how he's acting at the moment, he's like a dictator. Again, I hope these words get through to him, and that something in the future might be avoided. I then spend time with Jackie, asking if she regrets not staying in the CDC when it exploded. She says she does regret it somewhat, but after seeing that it wasn't just our group and seeing how many people have survived, that it makes not dying that much more bearable. She then says that if me and Rick had never found Sophia, that the morale of the group would have probably been impacted more. I then spend time with Morales and his family, and I see that after Carl had recovered, that now he's spending time with Sophia and his kids in Herschel's farm. I then ask Morales and his wife how they feel. They they think that if they went to Birmingham, if it would have been a good idea or not. Both of them saying that seeing how packed the highway was when all of those walkers came in, if they didn't go, well, if they did go, that they would have been, if if that happened the way it did on the highway, the walkers would have probably swarmed all of them, and there's only Morales and his wife who could have probably protected their children, and most of them would have probably died. But they're happy that they stayed because they like the fact that there are more kids in this group, and those kids can hopefully hang on to most of their childhood as long as possible. After that, I make my way to the Herschel's house, and I ask him if there's any books that could help us in the future, uh, like, say, botanical books due to it being a farm, medical books due to Herschel being a veterinarian, hunting, fishing, or wilderness guides due to Otis and the fact that he's a hunter. There's the possibility that he might be using those guides to track or like learn about foraging and all that kind of stuff. If they have those books, then fantastic. I'm sure that there probably would be botanical and medical books the hunting, fishing, or wilderness guides, probably not so much. But when for the rest of those 2 weeks, I decide to read those books while I continue watching over the wounded man, along with like the occasional swap out. After those 2 weeks are up, Randall is taken away by both Rick and Shane, but they return with him, and Rick wants it to go to a vote. Dale convinces him to think of what to say to the group to spare the man's life, and he's given until the end of the day to decide what he wants to say to us. Throughout the day, I begin hearing more about Randall, both from what Daryl was able to get from him via torturing him, and after finding that out about the fact that Randall might be from Maggie's school, I decide to approach Maggie, ask what he was like from school, to which I get a bewildered look from her. But she decides to open up a yearbook, and she finds out that he was at her school, but he was a couple years behind her. She then said that she never noticed him, so it's hard to provide some form of character for him. But he's still a kid, so it's possible that he can change. I think some more about what should be done with Randall, whether he should actually be killed or not. And the words that Maggie said to him about being young, a couple years, probably about 5-ish years younger than me, and there is a possibility that he can change. This begins making the belief that he isn't a heartless person. And once Dale returns and gives a reason why Randall shouldn't be killed, that the belief gets a little bit stronger. And after seeing Andrea side with Dale, I too decide to side with Dale, but also reiterate that we shouldn't let him escape, because if he does, there's the possibility that he might alert his group. We are also able to get Jackie on our side with this, but the rest of the group seem guilty, and this causes Dale to march off with anger. After Rick takes Dale to the barn to be executed, both Carl and Sophia decide to follow him to see what would happen, and Rick decides not to do it. And then there is a wail of agony coming from the distance, and it is discovered by Daryl that Dale had been gutted by a walker, so he is unable to be saved. Herschel goes up to them, sees that unfortunately Dale isn't able to survive, and Daryl decides to put him out of his misery. This death impacts me. I thought Dale, he was a great man, and if all of our group agreed with him about the fate of Randall, maybe his death could have been avoided if he didn't go storming off. It seems that I am not the only one who shares this sentiment, as the rest of the group attends Dale's funeral and shares their own feelings. After seeing Laurie confront Shane, I go over to him to make sure that he's okay. He looks distraught, but he is glad that she finally told him. After this, Rick decides to spare Randall, but let him out in the forest. I see a look from Shane, but I decide to ignore it. Shane then decides to leave with Randall, but comes back wounded and says that Randall's escaped. I begin suspecting something else with Shane, because there's no way that Randall could have escaped, because he had a wounded leg, and because he was wounded, there's no possible way that he could have hurt Shane, because Shane is double his size, both in the figurative sense and the literal sense because of how much muscle he has on him. I do go to make sure that Randall doesn't escape. I go into the forest with Daryl and Glenn, where we find the undead Randall and find out he has no might. So we don't know how he became a walker because, as far as we know, walkers can only become walkers if they're bitten. Then there is a distant gunshot that I hear in the direction that both Shane and Rick went. We all run back to the farm where, due to this gunshot, a horde of walkers has descended upon the farm. I see Morales order his family to escape with one of the cars, and that he will meet back up with them on the highway. He needs to make sure that everyone survives. Jackie is also helping Patricia and the other women escape the house to make sure they aren't swarmed. Due to seeing all of this going on, I decide to run to the house to make sure that everyone's okay and offer my assistance to try and help the best I can, so that I can help as many people as possible. I do see both Herschel and Otis holding off as many of the walkers as possible, making sure that they don't destroy the farm. But when the barn begins to go on fire, I'm told by Daryl that both me, Jimmy, and Morales should go to the barn and make sure that whoever did that is safe. We make our way over to the barn where in the RV, we go over to the barn, and we find out that it was actually Rick and Carl who set the barn alight. As they land on the roof, me and Morales continue holding off as many walkers as possible using the guns we have to hold them off. And eventually we're able to get Rick and Carl into the RV with us. And Jimmy is safe along with me, Morales, Rick, and Carl. As we begin making our way back over to the house, I see Jackie helping the woman. They are unfortunately flanked by a walker which attacks Patricia. Patricia is holding on to Jackie with dear life, but luckily Andrea is able to save Jackie, but unfortunately Patricia is killed like in canon. But she is sidelined by another walker, and after that she must be dead. I believe that she had died, and if she isn't, she is under a walker, so she can use its guts to escape probably. The rest of the women, that's Laurie, Jackie, and Beth, all go into the car with T-Dog. So once we're completely over to the house, we pull in front of Herschel. Herschel doesn't want to leave because it's his farm. I also see a distraught Otis who is crying over the fact that he just saw his wife get killed by a walker. Eventually, we are able to convince Herschel to leave and come with us. And not wanting Otis to die, like so many others, me, Morales, and Rick pull the crying Otis into the RV due to the fact that he's a heavy man. It requires probably about 2-3 people onto the RV, and we begin driving towards the highway. So Glenn and Maggie are also able to escape via their car. So Morales' family have gone to a car towards the highway. Glenn and Maggie have also gone to the highway. Jackie, T-Dog, Laurie, and Beth are also going towards the highway as well. And us in the RV, that includes me, Morales, Jimmy, Rick, Carl, Herschel, and Otis. We're all going towards the highway as well. The RV is also very cramped, by the way, as well, because 7 people in an RV, I think that would get cramped. Um, but we're eventually able to make our way back over to the highway, where after we all go around in a circle around a fire, we find out through Rick that Shane had to kill Shane as a human, and also the fact, well, we find out through the death of Shane. I don't think it's actually revealed. I don't think he actually reveals that he was still a human, and it's also confirmed that Patricia did indeed get killed, to the dismay of Otis. This is also where Rick also reveals the fact that everyone is infected after he found out through Dr. Jenner that they had been killed. Not they had been killed, that they were all infected, and even if you're bitten or you just die, you will come back as a walker regardless. So, from all of what I've said, there is I have about 3 possible deaths, from myself. There is the possibility that I would have got killed protecting Sophia from those walkers before Rick can help. There is also the possibility that I could have been killed by that massive horde of walkers from the school, if I'm unable to escape due to either not being fast enough, or just I'm flanked by another group of walkers and I'm killed by them. There is also, I could have been killed at the attack of the farm. Like, I could have been me, Morales, and even Jimmy. Maybe there's a possibility that those walkers would have been too much for us and would have surrounded us, and we would have been killed in the RV like Jimmy was in canon. Here are the inescapable deaths that are in this story. There is here is one of the big ones, is Shane. Despite the constant chats I had with Shane, I probably convinced you that there is the possibility that Shane might have been able to survive or found a way around it. But due to how complicated and how twisted Shane had become by season 2, this would have probably still led to Shane confronting Rick, saying that Shane was a better father, a better leader than Rick. And Rick would have probably still killed Shane. And of course, the walker would have been put down by Carl. Patricia is another inescapable death. Despite the fact that Otis is alive, and we have more survivors, is very likely that Patricia would have still been ambushed by that walker, like she was in canon, and still being killed by being bitten. Another inescapable one is Randall. Due to Shane's unpredictability, I still see Randall being killed by him due to Shane not wanting him to compromise the safety of the group. Because if Randall was allowed to escape, there is a possibility that he would have gone back to his group and brought more of his group to the farm and possibly killed everyone at the farm, or killed certain people and left certain people alive. There is also people that I haven't mentioned as well. There's Tony and Dave, which were the guys at the bar who was killed by Rick. due to me not being there, and I still think that it would have happened even if I was there, um, due to how hostile and aggressive they were, or hostile in like a loose sense. They weren't being like punchy, kicking kind of hostile, but like the kind of hostile where they are like calm-ish. I don't know how to describe it. Due to that, due to them being like that to Rick, Glenn, and Herschel, I still see them being killed by Rick for the safety of the group. I was luckily able to prevent the death of Otis due to the distraction I did for both him and Shane. Shane no longer needed to shoot Otis in order to escape, and he survives the encounter at the school. Another one that I was able to prevent was Jimmy, due to both me and Morales being with him in the RV when we went to go and rescue Rick and Carl. He was able to survive the walkers due to me and Morales shooting all of them. Otherwise, they would have swarmed him and killed him in the RV. And that's kind of it. Yeah, that's part 2, season 2 of The Walking Dead. Hopefully, I'm able to like hopefully this made sense and you enjoyed this podcast type of thing. If you enjoyed part 1 as well as this part, please let me know, and I will continue. Well, I probably will continue still making these, but let me know if you disagree with a lot of the stuff that I've done, and I will try to address it either in the next video or whichever video is recorded by the time that that video comes out. So thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the video, or not video, podcast. Still getting used to doing the podcast bit, but yeah, okay. This is Semroth Gaming signing out. Peace.